Rain came down like the sky was mad at Cedar Harbor. My sneakers were soaked. My phone was dying, and my sister's text was sitting there like a punch in the chest. Mom collapsed. St. Vincent downtown, come now. I yanked open a black car door because the app said black sedan, and I didn't have time to be careful, slid inside, blurted the destination, and only then looked up at cream leather soft lights, a partition, and a man in a navy suit who definitely wasn't my rideshare. Yeah, that happened. I reached for the handle to fling myself back into the storm, but the man lifted a hand, calm and steady. You're soaked, you're not going back out there. Where do you need to go? And in the time it took me to swallow my pride, he told the driver. Mason St. Vincent emergency entrance, and handed me a towel that felt like it cost more than my paycheck. I said I couldn't pay. He said he wasn't asking. I asked why. He said sometimes people need help, and sometimes the person sitting there can give it. The ER smelled like bleach and fear. The admitting nurse asked for the card, with that tight smile people put on when they've already decided who you are. And when I froze, this man, Elliot Rhodes, said, "Put it under my name," like he'd done it 1,000 times. The doctor said, arrhythmia and failing valve, and soon I asked how much, because I knew the answer would be bad. He said, 82 grand, insurance covers a third. My mother's hand was small in mine, and the number sat in my throat like a stone. Elliot said I can cover it, and I laughed, the kind of laugh that isn't funny, because life had taught me there are always strings, contracts, favors you pay back with interest. He didn't flinch. When I was 16, my mom got sick. A stranger helped. She lived, I never forgot. And in that moment, I chose a warm mother over cold pride. You know what I mean. A week later, my mother, Grace, was recovering on the cardiac floor, with a river view like a screensaver, and a nurse who called her Miss Grace like she was royalty. Elliot brought real flowers and real attention, asked me what I needed, not what I deserved. I said hours that let me sit by her bed, and a way to not choose between rent and medication. He nodded. I run Rhodes Atlas Labs. We build software for barbers and bakeries, and one person hustles, come meet the team, and I said yes, before fear could talk me out of it. Walking into his company felt like different weather. Bright windows, plants that weren't plastic, people who looked like they wanted to be there. Maytan greeted me like she'd saved me a seat. The CFO, Claudia Pierce, took in my thrift store blazer and said with a blade under her smile, "We love philanthropy here, but we are not a charity." And I said, "Me either, I'm expensive. I'll prove it." Held her stare, like I planned to live there. And then I went to work translating tech into human. I sat with a barber who kept payroll on index cards, a baker who cried when an online order worked for the first time, a woman running a plant shop out of a school bus. I wrote guides that didn't make people feel dumb, ran late-night webinars for single moms after bedtime. People emailed thank yous, and Elliot read them out loud, like they were gold stars. "You're better at this than I am," he said. And I told him I was just better at making people feel safe asking questions, which, if you've ever been ignored, is the whole game. He worried about the block I lived on, offered a company apartment near the office. I started to refuse. On instinct, my mother said, "We accept, thank you," and a doorman learned her name on day one. A rooftop garden gave her son and new friends, and the line between my eyebrows started to relax for the first time in years. Then the gala. Chandeliers like frozen fireworks, people in outfits that could pay my rent for a year. Elliot stood at the mic and announced we were expanding the scholarship program for community tech training, and he said my name into a room that never said my name before. A donor leaned toward her friend and said, "It's sweet how he takes on projects." And I turned with a smile. You learn from a lifetime of being underestimated. Projects Don't hire staff and pay taxes. People do bring your ideas to me. I run it." Her friend tried to swallow a laugh. Elliot looked at me across the table with that proud, "I see you" look. And after dinner, he fastened a small gold bracelet on my wrist, with a tiny key charm. "Keys," he said, stumbling through the rest. Like his courage was catching up to my place if you want. And maybe to a life we could build, if you want that too, no pressure. And I said yes, because no pressure was exactly my language. A statewide contract landed in his lap. Bring support to towns nobody remembers until election season. And the old hymn would have said yes and disappeared into meetings. The man sitting beside me asked if I thought he should. "This is your dream," I said. "I'll carry more at the office. We'll figure it out." He kissed my forehead, and that meant more than diamonds. Sundays became Blue Heron Lake, a cottage with a dock that caught the sunrise, a boat with peeling paint named After All. We learned to sit without talking, which is how you know it's real. 4 months later, he drove me to a street with painted Victorians and old trees, walked me into a house with a red door, where my mother and May were waiting, with paper cups of champagne, got down on one knee in the foyer, and said, "You got in the wrong car and set my life straight. Will you marry me?" I said. Yes, with my whole body, and in the middle of the pretty chaos, I went looking for a bathroom. Found his office, found a photo album tucked behind cables. It fell open to my father in army blues, my parents on their wedding day. Me with missing teeth, then yellowed clippings about a crash on County 14 drunk driver. Night patrol, Samuel Miles, my dad. Gone, and there it was in ink I'd never seen, but had heard whispered behind closed doors. Keith Rhodes. And when I looked up, he was in the doorway, jaw tight, not moving. "Tell me it isn't what it looks like," I said. He swallowed. "I was going to tell you when the day after I met you, I heard your last name at the hospital, and I put it together. I thought I would tell you, when there was a right moment. There is no right moment." Elliot, did you help us because of guilt at first, maybe then because your mom is kind and deserves better? Then because of you, and the honesty in that made me furious. I walked out because sometimes the strongest thing you can do is leave. You know what I mean? My mother called the next morning. "Come home, there's something you need to see on our couch." Sat a shoebox full of paper. A letter on Rhodes' atlas, letterhead from 3 years before I met him. "Dear Mrs. Miles, my father was responsible for your husband's death. I can't undo the past, but I can carry some of the weight. Let me help bank deposits that were small and steady. Co-pays a missed rent the community college semester I started and stopped. Envelopes with grocery cards. We called rewards. He helped us before he even knew me." "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked my mother. "Because you were already drowning, and I didn't want you to hate the raft then." She said the thing that cut me open and stitched me up in one breath. "Decide what you believe about accountability and love anger. Kept me warm, but it didn't pay one bill, and it didn't bring your father back. Elliot is not his father. Can you forgive him for the timing? Can you forgive yourself for needing what he gave?" I took the shoebox to his office. He was pale and unshaven. The man who carries rooms slumped over a secret he'd carried since 16. He said my name like a prayer. I sat and said, "Here are my terms. No more secrets. Truth, even when dinner goes quiet and we build something that gives away power, not just money. Make the program bigger than your last name and bigger than my pain." And he said done like he'd been waiting to be handed rules he could live by. We got married in the backyard of the Red Door House, string lights and barbecue on real plates, because my mother refused paper neighbors. We'd never met, waved like we'd always been theirs in his vows. He didn't pretend our story wasn't threaded with something dark. He named it like a scar. You stop hiding. Once you realize everyone has one, and we danced while May cried and Claudia pretended not to. Here's the part that starts fights in the comments. People still ask if I let a rich man buy my future, if love was just his apology. In a tux, I hear the part of me that used to whisper the same. Then I watch my mother pass a bowl of collards to a woman who once sat in my diner section after night shift and now runs her own catering company because our foundation paid for training and our software cut her paperwork in half. I watch barbers hire their first apprentice, a baker, buy a second oven, the plant bus owner sign her first lease. I watch Elliot lose an argument about cornbread on our porch and lose with grace, and I decide. The truth is messy and still true. He believed he owed us something. I believe love is not clean. It is a ledger of what we give and what we forgive, a daily agreement, not a receipt. So tell me this. If you were me, would you take help from the son of the man who took your father? If you were him, would you keep paying a debt? You didn't create as justice a straight line or a circle. We walk until we're dizzy. Drop your take in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from. Argue with me if you need to, and if this hits somewhere tender, share it with the one friend who'll debate you for an hour. I'll be in the replies listening.